any given Sunday. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Football. And it is January 15th, 2018. And yesterday, Sunday, January 14th, had two miraculous games, especially for Minnesota. But we will get into that. I wanted to dive into this full slate of games, including the Saturday matchups for the divisional round of the playoffs. Now, for the Falcons and the Eagles game, I didn't watch it live. I had to go back and watch the majority of it afterwards because I was witnessing a bunch of crap. That's the way I will describe it. It was the New York Rangers playing at Madison Square Garden against the Islanders, coming off of a break and getting absolutely embarrassed in front of their home crowd. It was an absolutely pathetic experience to see this team come out and take the apathetic approach of their coach when dumb penalty is called against them. They just look like they are absolutely lost out there when it comes to their fire. They're not checking. They're not back checking or forechecking well. They're just getting outskated to the puck. It was absolutely pathetic. But that is hockey. This show is not about hockey right now. This is about the divisional round of the playoffs. I just wanted to kind of take my shots at a team that I love in the New York Rangers. But anyways, the Falcons and the Eagles. So we saw the Falcons go cross-country to Los Angeles and defeat the Rams, defeat Sean McVay. And we say, hey, can they mount another Super Bowl run? Is it possible for them to do this again and get back to the stage where they blew it last year? The answer is no, because the Eagles win this game. But this is the first number one seed to be underdogs in the divisional round of the playoffs. It's kind of wild. When I went back and I started watching this game, I see all the missed opportunities that the Falcons just could not capitalize on. And I don't want to sit here and say the Eagles were lucky, because that's not fair. But they had a lot of lucky breaks that bounced their way, and that's football sometimes. It really is. Like when they gave the ball on 3rd and goal to rookie running back Corey Clement out of Wisconsin, and he just fumbles it. Nick Foles jumps on top of it, and they don't go to kick the field goal. They end up going for it on 4th down, and LeGarrette Blount scores a touchdown. And it's just one of those things where it's like, literally, the Falcons recover that, game's entirely different. That's just the way football is, though. Then we had Keanu Neal, when the first half was winding down, basically played hot potato with the football and just threw it to Torrey Smith, which led to that 53-yard field goal that closed the half. If all of these things just don't happen. I mean, literally, there were 4 Falcons around Zach Ertz, and Nick Foles inexplicably threw it right to Keanu Neal, who jumped the route, and then it like bounces off his knee or something crazy, and Torrey Smith ends up catching it. Like, that is just out of this world. But let's face it, these are the Falcons. Falcons will find a way to screw it up, and they did. So halftime comes around, scores 10-9. And as the game wound on, we knew the elephant in the room for the entire Falcons season would finally rise up and show its ugly head. That elephant was not positive for the Falcons. It was Steve Sarkisian. Now, I don't want to sit here and take pot shots at a coach. That job is incredibly hard, but I'm kind of going to sit here and do that. Julio and Matty Ice, they kept extended the drive, and with little time left, down by 5 late in the 4th quarter, they face 1st and goal. And the game's on the line right now. I mean, you got to think about it. They're down by 5. Touchdown, and they win. And they have 4 chances to do this. They have last year's highest-powered offense, a very experienced team, and they have all the momentum as they're driving down the Eagles' very formidable defense, converting on important 3rd and 4th downs with Julio Jones making incredible plays. But Sark comes out. He has 4 chances, and he makes 4 pretty questionable play calls that lead to the Eagles advancing to the conference championship. I mean, you got to think of it. Who the hell calls the low percentage 1st down fade to Julio Jones when you literally never used Julio Jones in the red zone the entire season? So you get that out of the way. That doesn't work. I mean, I would want to run or just try to get as much yardage there, or maybe do what you did on 3rd down with the slam. I mean, Julio does not, and no one really does, but Julio especially, he just does not have a high percentage on these fade routes, these one-on-one fade routes, and it did not work. And he follows that off with a shovel pass to the third string running back in Teron Ward. You have Devonta Freeman. You have Tevin Coleman. You put in Teron Ward and you do a little shovel pass over, I think the B gap on the weak side or the strong side, whichever side it was. Why? Like, that blew my mind at the same time. It was a very highly questionable call. And then he probably started hearing it because he's been hearing this all season. He's been hearing, you're not Shanahan. The offense never found a rhythm all year, and all those things were true. It's very, very disappointing. And then on third down, the only positive play, the play that made sense, the play that I think they should have used on first or second down, was an inside slant to Julio, and it actually gained yardage. But that set up a 4th and goal with the season on the line. The moment that you've dreamed of as a coach, as a player, all the preparation and all those extra hours you spent in OTAs, in training camp, throughout the season, planning. All for this moment, a 4th and goal, you score, you advance. You don't, you go home. And Sark calls a move the pocket rollout comeback to Julio Jones, which limits the field and essentially made Jones the only target, in which he kind of slipped and fell down, which did not help. But why would you do that on 4th down? I hate when you limit the field like that on a 4th down. It's not a high percentage play. The entire defense, a fast defense, just goes to that side. There was nothing on the backside. Sanu was swallowed up. Julio slips and falls, and he's already rock covered. It's a terrible sequence for the Falcons. And the funny thing is, Julio should have caught it. And that wasn't because of play design. On a botched attempt, Matt Ryan pump fakes, starts moving back towards the center of the field, throws it up to Julio. Julio jumps, and it goes through his hands. And I tip my cap for Matt Ryan for extending the play slightly. But it was poor play calling, it was poor execution, and I wouldn't expect anything more from the Falcons, because that's just the frickin' Falcons. They're never going to live down what happened, a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl, and you blow it to Tom Brady. Absolutely ridiculous. And speaking of Tom Brady, that's the next game we're going to get into. But that Falcons game, it wasn't a high-powered affair, obviously. 15-10, Eagles advance and host the Vikings, which we'll get into in a little bit. Nick Foles made some questionable throws in this game, but he was 23 of 30 for 246 yards. Got sacked once. The Falcons couldn't really get anything going on the ground. Tevin Coleman had a 23-yard run. But Devonta Freeman was absolutely swallowed up. Averaged less than 1 yard a carry, even though he did have the early touchdown pass, the reception, which was hard enough to get for the Falcons, because the Falcons couldn't really mount anything, because the Eagles' defense is legit. And that's true. You can't undersell that. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles for the Falcons. Another season, you're not going back, and Julio's going to be another year older next year. It's disappointing. And terrible play call sequence by Steve Sarkisian. But then we had the Titans and the Patriots, and if you listen to me, you know I've been saying this since the Titans got in the playoffs, since they were 8-4. They're the fakest 8-4 team in the league. They ended up finishing the season 9-7, winning against the Chiefs because Andy Reid play calls and the way he manages the clock is just absolutely terrible when it comes to January football for whatever reason. And I love Andy Reid, so it hurts to say that, but you got to call a spade, and that's exactly what it is. But you look at this game, and early on, Titans force a couple punts. They score the first touchdown in Foxborough. They get the stops, and it starts to pique your interest a little bit. But we all know it was a mirage. A few really big plays by James White, Deion Lewis, Tom Brady, and everything righted itself. James White gets those 2 early touchdowns. Brady finds Hogan in the back of the end zone, and they go up by 14 early. The game was essentially out of reach in my mind at that point. Again, I've been saying it for some time. The Titans were in way over their head and were not a good playoff team. I thought them winning last week was actually a hindrance to their future because it meant an extension for Mike Mularkey. That's at least what we heard throughout the entire week. But that wasn't exactly the case. Either as the Titans or Mularkey, not exactly sure what exactly happened, but they parted ways this morning. They will not be retaining Mike Mularkey. They said it was a mutual parting of the ways. But I think that is great for the Titans franchise, and it's no knock on Mularkey, but I just think that you need an offensive coach to maximize Marcus Mariota. And Marcus Mariota regressed this year. And that entire team's offense, where they have all these explosive weapons that they've surrounded Mariota with, just did not ever have a rhythm. And I honestly think it was because of the offensive coaching. And maybe the Titans realize they're really in a run for McDaniels here. So they got rid of Mularkey. That's what I think, at least. Because I think McDaniels with Mariota, and I want to say I said this on the show. If I didn't, I was thinking this for a while. I've talked to my friends about this. I said that would be an amazing match. And that's what I think McDaniels wanted. And now things are going to get interesting. But we'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. But yes, Mularkey is no longer the Titans coach, wins a playoff game, and is out. So that is unfortunate. And that game, it was just Tom Brady doing Tom Brady things. 337 yards, 3 touchdowns. Deion Lewis had 62 yards on the ground. James White, Brandon Bolden got in for a tutty. Gronk got a tutty. James White got a receiving tutty. Chris Hogan had the 1 catch for a touchdown as well. Corey Davis finally gets in the end zone for 5 catches, 63 yards, and 2 touchdowns in this game, one of them coming in extreme garbage time, but that was good for Mr. Davis because, he lived up to a top 5 billing when you're drafted that high, and he's been dealing with injuries, so it's good to see that he actually balled in this game. Now on to those Sunday games, and those Sunday games were very, very special, and the Steelers, I've been saying it all year, they played down to their competition. Well, I'm not going to say that here because the Jaguars is not someone that you play down to, but Pittsburgh was totally 110% underestimating this team. It was a really pathetic performance coming out the gate for the Steelers. When you think about how they underestimated the Jags, they were talking all week, tweeting about the Patriots. You have a playoff game ahead of you, a playoff game against a team that went into your building in week 5 and beat the ever-living crap out of you. And you sat there and you overlooked this stellar defense. You overlooked the team and said, Blake Bortles is our quarterback. We're going to beat them. You have Lev Bell talking about his contract throughout the week. Absolutely spitting in the face of Doug Marrone and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And they got what they were coming to. And I'm glad that they lost to the Jaguars. Not many people thought that would happen. I thought the Steelers and the Patriots were destined for an AFC Championship rematch. But you know what? Any given frickin' Sunday, you do not count teams out like that. The Jags came out frickin' swinging. I loved it. Putting Steel City on their heels early on, with Leonard Fournette getting the 1 touchdown where he dove over top, and then he has that excellent balance along the sideline when he runs for his 2nd touchdown of the day in the first quarter. And that was after Myles Jack came up with that big interception. Now, if you listen to me throughout these years, hear me talking about the draft, you'll hear all these names, like Myles Jack coming out of UCLA. He was going to be a top 5 pick, but he had chronic knee issues. He fell all the way to the 2nd round, where the Jaguars were able to draft him there. He was projected to go in the top 5 to the Jaguars in the 1st round. Because of the knee issues, he fell all the way to the 2nd. And you want to know who they got in that 1st round pick? It was freaking Jalen Ramsey. Probably the best cornerback in the league, right next to Patrick Peterson. That's still up for debate. And all of these young pieces that the Jaguars have accumulated over the years on defense. A lot of guys who were redshirted basically for their entire rookie seasons because of injury. Guys like Dante Fowler, Myles Jack. Also players who have just been Yannick Ngakoue absolutely balling out for the Jacksonville Jaguars. It has been a great showing of a young talent, and it's something to really marvel at. Because this team is young. Telvin Smith, Jalen Ramsey, they signed A.J. Bouye away from the Texans. So the future is bright here. And they're going to the AFC Championship game to play against Tom Brady. And who would have thought that the final 4 quarterbacks would be Case Keenum, Tom Brady, Nick Foles, and Blake Bortles? Absolutely crazy. But yeah, anyways, back to the Steelers game. Todd Haley in this game had a lot of questionable calls. And I know a lot of Steelers fans who are really in depth with it. They always tell me, because I can't watch every game of the Steelers, but just from what I've collected, from talking with them, he's constantly overthinking a lot of these short yarded situations. And his situational football is not the best, despite his play design and his ability to maximize people like Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. In this game, he did not do that when it came to these 4th down situations. He, on the 4th and 1, down by 14, he goes with a halfback toss to the outside against one of the fastest defenses in the league. it was incredibly questionable. He went with Juju Smith-Schuster over the middle, where A.J. Bouye got away with a pull. But instead of just either pounding the rock up the middle, where the Jags were quote-unquote vulnerable, I don't know how vulnerable with Marcel Darius and Calais Campbell there, Malik Jackson, or you could just give it to Big Ben. Big Ben's, 6'5", 240 pounds? Give it to him? His success rate on quarterback sneaks are absolutely ridiculous, but he did not do that on 4th and 1 several times, and it came back to bite the Steelers in the ass several times. It was really wild when you think about it. We also had Telvin Smith showing his incredible speed in this game when he scooped up one of Big Ben's fumbles, ran it back for a touchdown to make the score 28-7. That 7 came from an A-B touchdown. He would get another one later. But Ben answered right before halftime with a dime to Martavis Bryant. And then in the early third, the Steelers pull within a touchdown with another dime to Le'Veon Bell. You saw in the beginning of the game, they tried to execute that play, but it was covered well, so Ben just threw it away. And this, he got the man coverage that he wanted, and Bell accelerated to the back of the end zone, and it was a tutty. And this is when I started getting that feeling. I'm like, dude, the Jags might blow this. This will go down as one of the most epic playoff losses if this happens. Bortles ended up coming up with a few very, very clutch passes down the stretch. The one to Keelan Cole, which set up a touchdown. And then there was the third down. You see Blake Bortles go through his progressions. And I'm looking at TJ Yeldon, like, look in the flats, look in the flats. He finds TJ Yeldon, and TJ Yeldon doesn't just get the first down. He gets like an extra 25 yards. That was a big boy play by Blake Bortles. And I said, what you want? Now, Bortles still made some questionable calls. I saw him go deep a couple times into double coverage. Just some of those kind of plays where you do not want him to, do not want to trust him in that kind of situation. But I thought Nathaniel Hackett called a great game for Blake. They ran the ball and they set up play action. They had short little routes over the middle of the field, and they had posts going over the top. They had solid route combinations to help manipulate the Steelers' coverage. So Nathaniel Hackett, you got to tip his cap to him there, because Blake did sling it a little bit in this game. It really came up big on that Keelan Cole play. But the Steelers never really went away in this game. The Jags go up by the 2 touchdowns, and then on a 4th and 5 in their own territory, Ben bombs it to Antonio Brown. A.J. Bouye has great coverage on this ball, right? Antonio Brown comes up with his second touchdown, though. Crazy catch, amazing coverage. Antonio Brown absolutely balled out in this game. That's why you got to kind of feel bad for him, at least, and for some of these other players. And when you really think about it, Big Ben threw 5 touchdowns, almost 500 yards in this game, at home, put over 40 points against the Jaguars defense, and they still freaking lost. How crazy is that? Antonio Brown had 7 catches for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. Freaking Vance McDonald had 10 catches for 112 yards. I don't know. It's a nutty sequence. It really was. But that Jags defense is crazy. And when the Steelers pulled in from within 1 touchdown, it was up to Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles found Tommy Bohannon on a play-action fullback streak up the A-gap. That entire defense of the Steelers bit. Had no idea. Bohannon did a great job, former Jet, did a great job setting up like he was going to block the Mike linebacker and then just sprints past him, wide open, split the cover 2, touchdown. Easy for Tommy Bohannon. Creative play call, good job. And the Steelers forced to go with an onside kick late in this game, which was scrutinized. And I could see why, mainly because Boswell has never really been successful here. And you could have just used your timeouts, forced a punt, relied on your defense, instead of relying on the fluky chance of an onside kick, which was terribly executed by the Steelers. But that's not why they lost. They lost because poor situational coaching. They lost because they underestimated their opponent in the playoff, an opponent that has beaten them before. They lost because they did not realize how good that defense was. And they did not stop Leonard Fournette, who had 25 carries for 109 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game. You totally underestimate your opponent in the playoffs, you get punched in the mouth. You get punched in the mouth, you get knocked out. Steelers got knocked out. And that's exactly what happened here. And Mike Tomlin hasn't exactly gotten his teams fully prepared for situations in games like this. He really hasn't. I'm sorry. I know like a lot of people love Mike Tomlin, but I think this entire coaching staff should be questioned for losses like this. You do not suffer losses like this. You keep your team focused on this game, not the frickin' Patriots, team that you would have played the next week. So piss poor job by Pittsburgh's coaching staff and their team in general. And now we get to listen to Le'Veon Bell and that whole drama that's going to unfold throughout the entire offseason. Because we're not 100% sure he's going to get a franchise tag. Will he play? Will he sit out? Will he retire like he said? You don't say that the week before a playoff game either. It's a bad job on him. So I'm glad the Steelers lost. They got what they deserved in this game. Don't underestimate opponents in the freaking playoffs, especially opponents with the best defense. This isn't a fluky-ass opponent like the Titans, but you know what? The Patriots would have never underestimated the Titans even in that situation. The Titans wouldn't have done this either because the Titans aren't the Jaguars. Jaguars have an elite defense. You can win a Super Bowl with an elite defense. So shame on you, Pittsburgh. And this leads us all to the Minnesota Vikings hosting the New Orleans Saints. And that was one lovely affair to watch. And the Saints looked out of it early on in this game. Jerick McKinnon had a 14-yard touchdown run, followed up by a Kai Forbath field goal. Good on the Saints to hold them to a field goal there, because if you remember, that was when Case Keenum had like 7 freaking seconds to throw the football, and he found Thielen over the middle of the field for Latavius Murray 1-yard touchdown run. So everything was kind of just going downhill. But the Kai Forbath 20-yard field goal, that was 7 plays, 79 yards. They just drove right down their throat. Second quarter, like I said, the Latavius Murray 1-yard field goal after the Thielen play. 12 plays, 58 yards. They were mounting big drives against this New Orleans Saints defense. And the Saints really didn't have much to oppose it. Minnesota was coming up with big plays in the first half. Anthony Barr picks off Drew Brees on that slightly tipped pass. I mean, that happens, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, they're just outside the red zone. And you throw that interception, and it's like, how many more times are they going to be able to get in the red zone against this Minnesota Vikings team? His defense at home. But you never write off Drew Brees. And Michael Thomas, he cannot be held down. He ends up scoring the touchdown on Xavier Rhodes. Xavier Rhodes is really upset with the somewhat, I don't want to say illegal hit, but with the sort of blindsided hit that took out one of the Vikings players. Andrew Sadejo ends up going down early in this game after the first Drew Brees interception with a concussion. So the Vikings are starting to get beat up a little bit. And then Case Keenum gets a little flustered. I think it was late in the third quarter. He throws a ball up in the air. Marcus Williams, remember that name, comes up with a big interception. And the Saints seize literally all the momentum in the fourth quarter with these big defensive stops, these turnovers. They end up blocking a punt. And Brees hits Kamara on the mismatch in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. He was on a linebacker, just loops it over the linebacker's shoulder. Kamara comes down with it, and they seize the lead at this point. They were down 17-0 in this game, the Saints. They're able to climb back into it because they have players like Brees. They have resilience on the road. But then Case, huge play to Adam Thielen to get Kai Forbath in field goal range. And he nails that field goal. And then Brees had to be Brees once again. He had to get the team into field goal range, down by 1. Brees does that. It's 4th and 10. And he finds Willie Snead on an out route to all but secure this win with a Will Lutz field goal, which he knocks through for 24-23. But any given freaking Sunday, anything can happen. And one of the most astonishing plays in recent memory. And 10 seconds left. After the Vikings and the Saints just go back and forth, seizing the lead. There's 10 seconds left, literally one play to go. No timeouts. Case Keenum drops back to pass. And he throws it up as they flood the zone to the right. Throws it up to Keenum. Or throws it up to Diggs. Diggs jumps up and catches it as Marcus Williams drops his head, goes outside and misses him after mistiming his hit, by the way. And Diggs keeps his balance and runs it for a touchdown, a 60-yard touchdown to end the game. The first time in regulation playoff history a walk-off touchdown to win the game was scored. And literally, it was one of the more craziest things I've seen in sports. I sat there, and I even tweeted about it. I don't tweet that much. I should tweet more. With my jaw just open, saying, I cannot believe that just happened. I feel so bad for the Saints, for Brees, players like Brees who don't have many more years left in them. They're right there. All Marcus Williams, rookie out of Utah, had to do was tackle Diggs in bounds. And they don't have enough time to clock it. And he doesn't. He just whiffs. And he doesn't only whiff. He takes out Ken Crowley too. And Diggs just runs free to the end zone for a touchdown. 61 yards. I couldn't believe it. I honestly could not believe it. And that's sports right there. That's what you love. Unpredictability. Who would have thought? Literally, the Vikings probably had less than a 1% chance to win that game. You know the Saints are in prevent defense. You know they're funneling everything inside. They throw it outside towards the sideline. And one of the Saints rookies, one of their players, takes out another Saint player to free up Diggs to run to the end zone. I want to say I feel really bad for Marcus Williams. I don't think you come back from that. You have to have some sort of structure to your mentality to be able to bounce back from that, because he's never going to live that down. Marcus Williams just became infamous in New Orleans for this, just as Raheem Moore is infamous for the Joe Flacco throw over Moore. If you remember this going back a couple years, Peyton Manning in Denver. Joe Flacco goes to Denver, and he throws a bomb to Jacoby Jones, and Raheem Moore inexplicably just backpedals and falls on his ass. And the ball lands right into Jones. Jones takes it for a touchdown to win the game. Marcus Williams is there now. He is Raheem Moore. Raheem Moore wasn't able to bounce back. He bounced around the league, went to the Texans, went to the Giants for a little bit, and he just could never really get his name straight or come back from that epic mistake that he made. So I really do feel for the kid. I remember we covered him in the draft guide. My colleague, Matty Brown, did the write-up for Williams. I was doing safeties at that time. I did like Malik Hooker and Justin Evans, John Johnson, safeties like that. He did Marcus Williams. And I remember Marcus Williams' big knock, and me watching it, his tackling doesn't come to form. He doesn't wrap up. He doesn't drive his legs. And here he just drops his head, mistimes it all, and Minnesota advances to Philly for the NFC Championship game. Wild. That is sports, and that is unpredictability right there. And it was really something to marvel at. I do feel bad for Saints Nation. And Marcus, I don't know how you come back from that, bud. But that was the championship games. I'm not going to have an episode next week, so I will be in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl festivities. I'm very excited about that opportunity to be around the NFL world once again. It's going to be a lot of fun. But you will see the Vikings at Philly, and you will see the Patriots host the Jaguars. And like I said, I'm obviously picking the Patriots and the Vikings are my two picks, but one team that everyone used to write off was able to beat Tom Brady when he had an amazing team around him with a great defense, Randy Moss and everything. That team did one thing really well: get after the quarterback, force Tom Brady into uncomfortable situations, hit Tom Brady, and that's what the Jaguars are going to do. So that makes it a little bit more interesting than one would think. It's not like there's going to be Patriot receivers running wide open everywhere. Not with A.J. Boye, not with Jalen Ramsey. So that team's defense is so legit that's going to keep the Jags in the game. It's just, can Bortles, can that offense seize the day? Can they sustain themselves? Can they not put their defense into bad situations against Tom Brady? That's really what it's going to come down to. It's a big boy shoe time for Blake Bortles. I'm excited to watch that game. I really am. And then you have that Minnesota defense they're going to be playing in the elements in Philly against Nick Foles. So We will see. Who would have thought Nick Foles, Case Keenum, both with Jeff Fisher last year for the Rams, would be playing in the NFC Championship game? Absolutely. No one scripted it this way. That's why we love sports. Anyways, on to just quickly the coaching carousel that goes on. Now, I brought up how Mike Mularkey was fired from the Titans job, or that he resigned, or whatever the hell happened. That does have a huge impact on the Giants. Now, I think Josh McDaniels was already kind of set on the Colts job a little bit more than the Giants. But now this, I think, essentially eliminates Josh McDaniels from being the Giants head coach. And this is kind of becoming a really undesirable situation for the New York Giants, which sucks because I'm a Giants fan. But I think this Mike Mularkey firing, I think McDaniels has a strong interest in the Titans. I do. I think he would go down there if Dick LeBeau stays there too. Has a defense, great defensive mind there. Has a lot of structure, has a lot of solid players, has a lot of young talent on that offense with a good offensive line that is very young. That's a good situation there. We've been saying all season how Mularkey was not able to maximize the potential of that offense. And with McDaniels going down there, that would be something special. And I honestly think that's what's going to happen. I think McDaniels is going to end up in Tennessee. Now, who goes to the Colts? I think Mike Vrabel. I think the Texans defensive coordinator, who's only been a D coordinator for 1 year, I think he could legit be the Colts head coach. That's what I'm planting my flag on right now. There's still a lot of things to play out. These 2 games have to be played before a lot of these guys can be hired. A lot of these coordinators are on these teams. I remember hearing about a week ago that Patricia had the Giants job. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I can understand that. I think my first reaction was I was a little disappointed just because I wanted an offensive coach. And I really wanted to know if we did bring in Patricia, who the hell was leading the Giants offense. So there were a lot of unanswered questions. But now, Patricia does not seem like he's going to the Giants. And that's what I originally thought. I said this on the podcast too. Patricia's going to the Lions. And that's what I feel like is going to happen. He's going to be the Lions head coach. Bob Quinn, the Lions general manager, and Patricia work together in New England. You bring Patricia in, you could keep Jim Bob Cooter as the offensive coordinator there in Detroit. So Patricia can handle the defense, he can handle the team, and then Jim Bob Cooter can handle that offense, which he's had success doing with Matt Stafford. Made a lot of sense to me. That's why when I heard the Patricia to the Giants, I was like, I'm not 100% sold on that, but it was coming from very reputable sources. But Patricia to the Lions is what I think. And that leaves the Giants in here like, what do we do? You have Steve Wilkes, who's been a coordinator for 1 year. You have Pat Shurmur, who's also being rumored to the Cardinals. The Giants are in a lose-lose situation. If they lose out on Patricia, they lose out on McDaniels, which is looking like they might. Then you sit there and you say, who's going to be the Giants' next head coach? I mean, Steve Wilkes has been written off by the media. Now he's back. Dave Gettleman says he's back in the conversation. Is that just because the Giants realize that they're not in the running for McDaniels or Patricia? It could be. Obviously, you don't want to sell someone short, but the Giants could be settling on their third, fourth option here if Shurmur ends up going to the Cardinals. Not a great situation for the New York Giants, and I'm excited to see how it plays out, but it doesn't seem like the Giants are going to get their first pick, which is unfortunate because the Giants are one of the more revered franchises, but they have an old quarterback and they have a lot of issues along the offensive line with a lot of cap issues as well. Obviously, Steve Wilkes has the connection to Dave Gettleman like we've talked about, but he's not experienced as coordinator. He only has 1 year of experience as a defensive coordinator, and he did a good job doing it. But I would just fear the Giants are settling on their fourth option here with Patricia going to Detroit. I think that McDaniels is going to the Titans. He still has an outside chance to go to the Colts, but the Giants I think are his third option. Now, I'm not in his head. I could be totally wrong. It's just my gut feeling and me reading through the lines of things. So the Giants could be sitting here with their third or fourth option, and that's never, ever an ideal situation for a franchise. Alrighty, guys. Well, that was the playoffs, and that's what's going on with the coaching world. I hope you guys enjoyed this show. You probably won't hear from me for a little while. Going down to the Senior Bowl. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get a Senior Bowl list out to you guys. I have been very busy with everything going on at Inside the Pylon, but I wanted to plug this show and talk about what just transpired with the playoffs in the National Football League. Alrighty, everyone. You have a great, great Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.